Okay, today we are here to learn about what it takes to be a reproductive justice congregation. We've got Sonia Miller here from the Texas Freedom Network. The Texas Freedom Network was founded in 1995 as a nonpartisan grassroots organization of more than 130,000 religious and community leaders who support religious freedom, individual liberties, and public education. Based in Austin, TFN acts as the state's watchdog for monitoring far-right issues, organizations, money, and leaders. The organization has been instrumental in defeating initiatives backed by the religious right in Texas, including private school vouchers and textbook censorship at the State Board of Education. Sonia Miller is the Outreach and Faith Coordinator for Texas Freedom Network. She coordinates TFN's work with clergy and faith communities with a special focus on reproductive rights, justice, and LGBTQ equality. Sonia joined TFN in August of 2015 while attending Austin Presbyterian Theological Seminary. Sonia's lifetime commitment to social justice has led her to serving as the public school teacher and principal and working in abortion care prior to joining TFN.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here today. I've told a few people along the way that I have been doing my UU run. I am a lifelong Presbyterian, but have enjoyed, since coming to TFN, worshiping and sharing with many different Unitarian congregations. Just last weekend, I was at the SWU conference and spent Friday and Saturday learning much about the women of the Southwest Unitarian Women's Fellowship. So I enjoyed that, and I'm very glad to be here. And you did a really good job of taking care of my first slide. I am here from TFN, and we are a nonpartisan grassroots organization. How many of you are familiar with TFN? It's a hardworking group of people committed to all forms of justice, I would say. Go ahead. I am coming on behalf of Just Texas, which is actually a project of TFN. In 2013, HB 2 was the very onerous omnibus abortion bill that the infamous Wendy Davis filibuster was part of the Senate proceedings. I'm sure many of you remember that, and the 13 hours and the many, many, many people who filled the Capitol in orange shirts to say, this is not okay with us. There were a large group of clergy that attended those rallies and participated in that time. And after HB 2 passed and 2013 legislative session was over, that group of those clergy came together and said, we need something to keep this effort going. We can't just show up on the odd years and hope to make any kind of difference. So Just Texas was born, Faith Voices for Reproductive Justice. We have an advisory board of 7 clergy members, 2 of whom are UU. Chuck Freeman is on this board, and then a UU pastor from Austin, Marisol Caballero, is also on this board. And then we have Presbyterians and a Catholic voice and a Baptist voice. So we are an interfaith group, and we do several projects. So we are, as Just Texas, really working to try and change the faith narrative that comes forward in Texas as discriminatory and using faith as a weapon against people. So you can go ahead. I wanted to start with talking a little bit about reproductive justice and what is reproductive justice, because we use the words oftentimes reproductive health, reproductive rights and choice, and reproductive justice interchangeably. And I want to start out by saying these are not interchangeable terms. There are 3 different frameworks that we work out of, and they're not interchangeable, and one does not replace the other. So let's look at reproductive health really quickly. The focus in reproductive health is really on providing individual service, research, the facilities, looking at things like informed consent, safe and medically appropriate care. This is a very, the umbrella of reproductive health really is very resource intensive. All of the things that come under your health care fall under the auspice of reproductive health, okay? Reproductive rights or choice, as looking at the legality and the legal rights of reproductive health care, and particularly abortion. We look at it from a constitutional, a judicial, a legislative, and electoral focus. And as many of you may know, there are about 50 bills before our legislature right now around the area of reproductive rights and choice. Some of them are from anti-abortion. A large number of them are from the anti-abortion proponents. And there are those that come under the pro-choice movement. And most of those come under an organization or a coalition of organizations under the name of Trust, Respect, Access. So if you are interested in looking at the bills that we support from Texas Freedom Network, I would urge you to look up trustrespectaccess.org, and there will be a listing of the bills to support in reproductive rights and choice. You can go ahead. And reproductive justice is a much broader intersectional agenda. I think of reproductive justice as a very broad umbrella under which many of our issues of social justice come. They pay close attention to the inequalities, our social inequalities, and the isms that we are working to undo, and a focus mostly on the lives of marginalized people. The concept of reproductive justice was born out from women of color. Sister Song is an organization that is very much on the forefront of the idea of reproductive justice. The National Latina Institute for Reproductive Health is another organization of women of color that works for reproductive justice. Reproductive justice combines reproductive rights, social justice, and human rights. Okay. And I will say your website, there under your association, the UUA Association website, has a lot of very, very good information on reproductive justice. There's a tab, and I've used it a lot. It's reproductive justice. There's a lot of resources that can go further to explain the differences between the three, and to give a definition that the UUA has come up with. This definition is straight from Sister Song. Reproductive justice is the right to bodily autonomy, personal bodily autonomy, the right to have children, the right to not have children, and the right to parent the children we have in safe and sustainable communities. Okay. It's under that umbrella that I'm now talking from. And I don't know how many of you know this statistic, but 1 in 3 women in their reproductive lives have an abortion. And as I'm talking to congregations, that means in the room where anytime we're sitting, and as I look out, that statistic would say that 1 in 3 of us sitting here have or will have had an abortion. And those decisions that we make in our reproductive lives involve all of our faith, our beliefs, and our spirituality. And yet, when we listen to the dominant faith narrative in our state, it's often a narrative that is shaming and judging women for their reproductive decisions. And I will say particularly abortion, but I'll also open that up to looking at how we shame, judge, and stigmatize each other in terms of our choices to not have children, or our choices or our issues with infertility, even miscarriages and adopting when we choose to adopt. There's a lot of shame, judgment, and stigma surrounding all of those issues of reproductive health, choice, and justice. So we like to say toxic theology and toxic religion infect our culture and make a difference for women and how they perceive and feel about themselves in their faith story as it relates to their reproductive story. So what can we do to make a difference? I listened today to how do we sustain the peace, and I thought this is a very well set. These two pieces go together very well because, again, in the time we are now, it seems like we're going to get battle fatigue, resistance fatigue, as we see all of the different causes that we need to speak out, show up, show our solidarity for. So I'm bringing to you a suggestion for a reproductive justice congregation designation. And this is the major project of Just Texas right now. And in this designation, we are hoping to create a movement to eradicate the stigma and the judgment and shame around reproductive health care, choice, and justice in Texas, one congregation at a time. Right now, we have 3 congregations. We launched this initiative this past summer. We've really made a big push since November 8th to get our early adopters. We're looking for somewhere between 15 and 20 early adopter congregations. And then once we do that, we will make a big media push and make a bigger statement when we have a list. Here are our congregations who have signed on. Currently, we have 3 congregations that have gone through the process and become reproductive justice congregations. First Unitarian in Dallas, Wildflower Unitarian in Austin, and St. Andrew Presbyterian in Austin are our 3 already gone through the process. And like Horizon, I have 26 other congregations that are in the same place where I'm going, making presentations. The congregation is having meetings and talking about, is this something we want to do? Does this align with our values? So with those numbers, it looks like if 20 of those come forward and sign up and say, yes, we want to be designated a reproductive justice congregation, we'll then be able to go forward and make it a bigger statewide issue, okay? It is basically our belief that to make any long-term inroads into the issues of reproductive justice, we need to do culture change in Texas. And we need to change the way people think and feel around the issues of abortion and reproductive health care. So that's the main purpose. We're also looking, when you are designated as a reproductive justice congregation, you are communicating to the outside that your congregation is safe and welcoming for everyone that comes through the doors, which means the conversations about reproductive choices you're safe to have those conversations in your space. A lot of research tells us that even though 1 in 3 women make a decision to have an abortion in their reproductive life, almost none of them have conversation about that within their church community or even with their pastors. And that is really because of the shame, judgment, and stigma that surrounds those decisions. Okay? The other big piece that I feel very strongly about, particularly since November 8th, is that we need to create and hold space for courageous and difficult conversations around all of the issues that come under the umbrella of reproductive justice. And as I heard today, working on immigration issues and racial ethnic discrimination and LGBTQ equality and poverty, these are all issues that come under the umbrella of reproductive justice because they are all things that block access for marginalized and women of color to make reproductive choices for themselves and sustain their families. Okay, so go ahead. So, reproductive justice congregations, and I passed out to most of you, if you didn't get one, I can give you one later, is a handout here and the brochure. But a reproductive justice congregation is committed to these three principles. First and foremost, we trust and respect women. We promise that women who attend our congregation will be free from stigma, shame, or judgment for their reproductive decisions, including abortion. And we believe access to comprehensive and affordable reproductive health services is a moral and social good. Those are the basic three principles of a reproductive justice congregation. I want to be clear that a reproductive justice congregations are not publicly declaring that everyone in the congregation believes the same thing about abortion. What we are saying is that access is important. We are not saying that everyone here looks and thinks about abortion from the same moral standpoint. Okay? This is not a political movement or issue. It is an issue of holding that space for everyone to be here and be able to explore their own choices and decisions and access and how they access those care. Okay? To become a reproductive justice congregation is fairly simple. We ask that you hold conversations about reproductive justice and your specific values and how you see living out those values in the life and work of your congregation. And then if the principles and your values align and you want to go forward, we ask that your board formally vote to adopt the principles. So what we're looking for, Just Texas is looking for, is congregations who are willing to make that public commitment. And once you've made that commitment and had that board adopt it, you let us know. We send you a beautiful plaque that you put out in your front entrance. We've had several requests for big banners, so we're looking into creating those as well. The plaque has this logo on it. It says that you are a congregation in this sacred space. We affirm these principles, and it lists the principles. It also says that the leadership, both lay and clergy leadership in this congregation, will do everything they can to make this space safe and welcoming for everyone who enters. So that's basically the plaque. We send you the logo, which you already have. I've sent it to you already. You've used it in publication. You can put that on your website, on your Facebook page, any other of the social media. We list you as a congregation on our Just Texas Facebook page, on our Just Texas website, and that then you're officially a part of the reproductive justice congregation movement. Can you go next? After you've done the board adoption, we asked you to determine what level. We've created 3 different levels of involvement because we have congregations across the state who are willing to adopt those principles and put something in their narthex, but they do not care to do anything else more public than that. And we welcome that as part of our movement, but we also have some other levels of involvement for you. So we can ask a second level for you to commit to regular education around reproductive issues, reproductive justice issues. And one of those pieces that we ask is that you include medically accurate, developmentally appropriate sex education as part of your rotating basis. And I saw the OWL room. I know that that's a piece of what the UU congregations do regularly. Not all churches do that. So I applaud you, so that's not a difficult piece for you. We also ask that lay leadership and clergy attend continuing education around the issues of reproductive justice. We will, once you've signed up, certainly keep you in the loop of all of those kinds of opportunities that are in the DFW area. I've come several times already in the last year and a half to offer different types of continuing education to clergy and lay leadership. So that would be another piece, those kinds of things for level 2. And level 3 is providing public witness for reproductive justice in the political arena and in the media. And that looks like going to testify this past Monday, the same day as UU Day at the Capitol, where there were 260 UUs that were there testifying, where 3 bills came up, and we had people signing up to testify against those 3 abortion bills that were in committee hearings last week. So those kinds of things. We also ask for op-eds often that we can run across the state. And those are some examples of that kind of public witness that we look for in that 3rd level of involvement. Okay? Once you have become a reproductive justice congregation, I like to ask, what's next? How do you want to live out that commitment for working towards reproductive justice as a congregation? And we have ideas, and we are happy to brainstorm with you and connect all the RJ congregations together so that they can work with each other as a resource. Some ideas that we have just thrown out and are thinking about are preaching and teaching about reproductive justice, which I'm certain happens here on a regular basis. It was part of the sermon today. Collecting special offerings for reproductive justice organizations, inviting RJ groups to present or teach, learning and providing those opportunities to engage in those dialogues around those areas that are difficult to talk about, partnering with RJ groups to do work together, adopting an RJ framework that drives all of the mission and justice work that you do as a congregation is another idea. So those kinds of things can become organic and come from you, and then you let us know, and we'll add them to our list that we can help share with other places. And so I wanted, this is, before I say this, rumor had it that this was a 2-hour presentation, and I'm on my last slide, and it is 12:30. It's not a 2-hour presentation. So we're going to go for questions next, and then we'll be done. But I just really wanted to say that one of the most powerful pieces that I heard on the Sunday after our past election, I was at First Unitarian in Dallas for worship that day. And the readings came from, one of the readings came from Turning to One Another by Margaret Wheatley. And I thought, what a perfect way to look at what an RJ congregation is. There is no greater power than a community discovering what it cares about and are asking you to look at your values and declare those through the principles is exactly what the process to become an RJ congregation is and looks like. And she closes almost the last line of that poem is, trust that meaningful conversations can change your world. And I truly believe when we come together and have conversations around the issues of reproductive justice and allow the space for women to talk about their reproductive story as it weaves with their story of spirituality and faith, we can truly change the world.